talk English.
So you're watching a thriller, like a really tense one. The tension is totally peaking. The hero kicks open a door, turns to her partner, and yells, "I've got your six."
Right, classic action movie moment.
Exactly, and the partner nods, and they rush in. And you just pause the movie. You're sitting there looking at your English textbook on the table, and you're just thinking, six? What?
Right, like, did I miss a prequel?
Yeah. Did I miss something? Because you know the vocabulary, you aced all the grammar tests, but suddenly literally nothing makes sense. And that is because, well, textbook English teaches you the rules, but movie English teaches you the culture.
That's the exact friction point for so many language learners, honestly. A textbook is built for this sort of universal, sterile clarity.
Right.
But when native speakers actually talk, or, when scriptwriters are writing dialogue trying to mimic them, they rely on this incredibly dense, constantly shifting web of slang. It's shared cultural references and just a ton of unspoken context.
Yeah, the stuff you can't just look up in a standard dictionary.
Exactly. If you just translate the literal words, you miss the entire subtext.
Yeah.
You really have to move beyond the dictionary definition to understand the underlying social dynamic.
And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We have this really fascinating set of notes decoding American movie slang.
It's a great set of notes.
It really is, because the goal here isn't just to, memorize a new vocabulary list. We really want to bridge that gap between the formal English of a classroom and the incredibly casual, often totally baffling ways native speakers use language in the real world.
Yeah, it's about seeing how the language lives and breathes.
So true. We're going to look at how vocabulary meant for, a literal battlefield somehow ends up getting used at a Sunday brunch, and why mastering that specific shift is the real key to fluency.
The linguistic migration we see in these notes is just incredible. I mean, we start with the intense life-or-death jargon of the military, of aviation, espionage.
High-stakes stuff.
Very high stakes. And what's fascinating is how Americans have completely hijacked this language to describe the most mundane, low-stakes daily situations.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it really is a total inversion of scale. Let's go back to that phrase from the movie scene. "I've got your six."
Right.
If someone says this, they aren't talking about a number at all. They're telling you they have your back, or, they're watching your blind spot. But the actual mechanics of why we use the number six are deeply rooted in a military orientation, right?
Right. So the military relies on a clock face system for situational awareness. If you imagine standing perfectly still in the center of a giant clock, 12 o'clock is directly in front of you.
Okay, got it.
3 o'clock is to your right, 9 o'clock is to your left, and 6 o'clock is directly behind you.
So it's your back.
Yes, it is your ultimate blind spot. So when soldiers are moving through a hostile environment and one of them says, "I've got your six," they are offering a literal life-saving promise of protection. They're watching the one area you absolutely cannot defend yourself.
But then, and this is what's so funny, you take that solemn life or death promise and you drag it into, a corporate office building.
Look.
You might be staring at a spreadsheet, completely overwhelmed by some deadline, and a coworker just walks by and says, "Hey, don't worry, I've got your six on this."
They are definitely not shielding you from sniper fire.
No, they're just offering to catch a typo for you. The stakes drop to absolute 0, but the language stays at a 10.
And the comedy of American casual speech lives right in that gap. You are applying maximum cinematic drama to minimal real-world risk.
It's so dramatic for no reason.
It is. And this is exactly where a literal translation fails the learner. You cannot walk up to your American colleague and say, "Do not worry, I am watching your number six."
Oh man, that would be so weird.
It would be. The idiom functions as a single, unbreakable block of cultural meaning. If you dissect it into its literal words, it just dies.
It's almost like a shared inside joke. You use the phrase and the other person instantly understands the exaggeration. And that same sarcastic exaggeration shows up constantly in how we use military commands like, stand down.
Oh, that's a classic de-escalation order. In military protocol, to stand down means to cease offensive action. You return to a non-alert, relaxed state.
Like putting the weapons away.
Exactly. In a movie, this is that tense moment where a commanding officer yells at a hot-headed rookie who's, about to make a huge mistake. It is an assertion of authority over chaos.
But in real life, you're just using it on your friends. Like, let's say we're trying to figure out dinner and I start getting way too stressed out trying to coordinate like 5 different delivery apps, and I'm pacing around the room.
I can picture that.
You could just look at me from the couch and say, "Stand down, I already ordered the pizza." You're subtly mocking my intensity by using a rigid military command to, you know, address a takeout order.
You're pointing out something crucial about interpersonal dynamics there. By telling you to stand down, the speaker is framing your behavior as unnecessarily combative or frantic.
Right, like I'm doing too much.
Exactly. It's a playful, slightly sharp way to say, you are treating this pizza situation like a war zone, and you need to immediately disengage.
And the exaggeration is what keeps it from sounding mean, you know. It softens the criticism. And if we stay in that cinematic action universe, there's the whole espionage angle.
Lies.
Yeah, spies. A rogue agent in a spy thriller is someone who acts alone. They break all the protocols, they go against their own agency to save the world. It's pure Jason Bourne action.
It implies this sort of righteous rebellion. The hero goes rogue because the system is broken, the rules are wrong, and they alone have the moral clarity to act outside the law. It carries massive narrative weight.
Yet I will catch myself using that exact phrasing to describe my lunch choices.
We all do it.
I'll be recounting my weekend and I'll say, yeah, we were supposed to get salads, but we went rogue and got tacos. It's hilarious precisely because choosing a taco over a salad is like not an act of international treason.
But phrasing it that way elevates your afternoon. It adds a layer of narrative drama to an otherwise highly forgettable event.
Right.
You aren't just eating a taco, you are defying the established order.
I am a rebel.
Exactly.
But sometimes that drama isn't just about spicing up a boring story. It's about avoiding something entirely, like a tactical retreat.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, if a heist is falling apart in an action movie, or like a bomb is ticking down, the characters scream, "Abort mission!"
Because the parameters have shifted or the danger has become completely insurmountable, it is an immediate, non-negotiable cancellation of a highly coordinated plan just to preserve life.
And we use it for the most painfully normal things, usually dodging an awkward social encounter, like you're walking into a coffee shop, you see an acquaintance you desperately want to avoid, and you just whisper to your friend, "Abort mission," and you spin around and walk right back out the door.
Just immediately out.
Yeah, you're comparing avoiding 2 minutes of small talk to a fighter jet pulling up at the last possible second. It's so dramatic.
What's interesting there is how that language creates an instant conspiracy with your friend. You aren't just saying, let's leave. You're framing a simple social avoidance as a shared peril. It bonds the two of you in this exaggerated cinematic escape.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. That exaggeration, whether it's going rogue for tacos or aborting a mission to avoid a neighbor, it's incredibly funny when the stakes are low. But when the stakes shift from physical danger to social embarrassment, the slang actually gets much more defensive.
That's a great point.
We're moving from the literal battlefield of action movies to the subtle, invisible, emotional minefields of everyday life.
It is a profound shift in focus. The underlying anxiety changes from, will I survive, to will I be accepted, or, will I humiliate myself in front of this group?
Yeah, social survival.
Right. The language here is entirely about navigating relationships, reading emotional cues, and understanding your place within a specific hierarchy.
Which makes a phrase like, read the room, the perfect bridge between the two. The room in this context isn't the physical walls or the furniture, it's the social atmosphere.
Precisely. It requires a high degree of emotional intelligence. To read the room is to observe the unspoken vibe, the body language, the silence, the underlying tension, and adjust your behavior so you don't clash with it.
And in film, you usually see this deployed as a harsh warning to a totally tone-deaf character.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the guy who cracks a loud, inappropriate joke right after someone shares some terrible news. The room goes dead silent. His friend just grabs his arm and whispers, "Dude, read the room." It's basically a polite way of saying, stop talking immediately before everyone here hates you.
And it is intrinsically linked to personal accountability. If you fail to read the room, the social consequences are entirely yours to bear, which ties directly into the concept of our next phrase. That's on you.
I really want to pull this one apart because the distinction between that's on me and that's on you is a single word, but it completely flips the power dynamic of a conversation.
It really does.
Like if I mess up a project and I say to my team, "Hey guys, that's on me, I'm taking responsibility, I'm apologizing, and I'm absorbing the blame," but flipping one word changes everything.
It turns an apology into a firm boundary. That's on you, is a flat refusal to absorb someone else's blame. If a character in a drama tries to deflect responsibility for a terrible decision onto their partner, the partner might just hold up their hands and say, no, that's on you.
Right.
It means you made this choice and you will deal with the fallout alone.
It's almost confrontational. If my friend complains they failed a test because they spent all night playing video games instead of studying, and I just look at them and say, yeah, well, that's on you, I'm actively denying them sympathy.
It is a very direct piece of everyday slang. It cuts straight through polite commiseration.
Yeah, it's cold. But then sometimes we use slang to soften our edges rather than sharpen them. Managing how people perceive us is a huge part of modern communication, which brings in the modifiers lowkey and high-key.
Oh, you cannot spend 10 minutes on the internet without seeing these.
Literally impossible.
They function as a way to calibrate the intensity and the public nature of your statements. Low-key softens an admission. It means you are doing something subtly, or you hold an opinion you don't necessarily want to broadcast to the world.
Kind of like keeping it a secret, but not a strict one.
Exactly. If you say, I am low-key obsessed with that new show, you are admitting a strong interest, but signaling that you aren't going to be weird or intense about it. You're maintaining your social composure.
Right, I'm watching every episode, but I'm not buying the merchandise or getting a tattoo of the logo. But if I say I'm high-key obsessed, I'm abandoning all subtlety. I want everyone to know I'm practically starting a fan club.
It is entirely about regulating vulnerability. High key is complete, unapologetic ownership of an emotion, whereas low key gives you a social escape hatch. You're invested, but not, too invested.
Man, I am high-key loving how much psychological work these tiny modifier words do. It's just brilliant. And that extends to how we react to things, too. Like, if we look at how people express amusement now, it's almost violently exaggerated.
It really is.
If a friend tells me a hilarious story, I don't respond by saying, wow, that is very humorous. I just text them a skull emoji, or I say the words, I'm dead.
The ultimate linguistic escalation, we have moved past LOL, past I'm crying, straight to this humor was so potent it has actually ended my life.
But the delivery is what makes it work, right? It's not a theatrical performance of dying. You don't gasp for air and clutch your chest. It's usually completely deadpan. You just stare at them with a totally straight face and say, I'm dead.
The contrast between the morbid language and the completely flat physical delivery
Yeah.
is the engine of the joke. It is another form of that comedic exaggeration we saw with the military terms.
Which brings me to a phrase that completely breaks my brain from a grammatical standpoint. I can't even.
Yes.
Usually it's followed by absolutely nothing, just silence. Like someone tells you a wild piece of gossip and you say, are you serious? I can't even. And the sentence just dies. So wait, does intentionally leaving a sentence unfinished, like saying, I can't even, actually communicate more raw emotion than finishing a proper thought? It's crazy to me that a phrase breaking every fundamental rule of English grammar somehow feels heavier.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense. It is a brilliant mechanism because language isn't just a tool for exchanging sterile objective facts. It is primarily a tool for signaling your social awareness and your internal emotional state.
Right.
When someone says, I can't even, the structural incompleteness of the grammar perfectly mirrors the feeling of being emotionally overwhelmed.
So the broken sentence is the emotion.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
You are demonstrating to the listener that your cognitive processing has been short-circuited, whether by how cute a puppy is or how wildly frustrating a situation is. If you actually finished the sentence and said, I am so frustrated by this gossip that I cannot articulate my thoughts, you would be grammatically perfect.
But you sound like a robot.
Yes. You would destroy the emotional truth of the moment. The silence at the end of I can't even does all the heavy lifting.
The absence of words becomes the most powerful word. That is such a cool way to look at it. And it highlights how much of the slang is really just about feeling out the energy of a situation, which is literally the definition of a vibe check.
Very much a product of social media and modern youth culture.
Yeah.
A vibe is the intangible energy radiating from a person, a physical place, or a social situation. A vibe check is a deliberate, informal assessment of that energy.
You see this constantly. You're standing outside a crowded restaurant, the lighting is harsh, the music is way too loud, everyone looks miserable, and you just look at your friend and say, vibe check.
You're basically asking, are we all reading this room the same way?
Yeah, exactly. Like, do we all agree this place is awful?
It is an incredibly efficient way to establish consensus. It bypasses a long analytical conversation about why the restaurant is unappealing and distills it down to a shared intuition. You are calibrating your social radar with your peers.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We've built up this incredible arsenal. We can use military tactics to dodge our neighbors. We can establish firm boundaries with "that's on you." We can assess the energy of a room with a vibe check. But having the vocabulary is only half the battle.
It really is.
Honestly, it might be less than half, because if you just take these phrases and inject them randomly into your speech, it sounds terrible.
Yes, the execution is everything. Knowing the definitions is entirely insufficient if you don't understand the underlying mechanics of how these phrases are deployed. It really comes down to a few meta words of language: slang, colloquialisms, register, context, and delivery.
Yeah, let's look at those. Slang is the super informal stuff we've been talking about, and colloquial is just, conversational everyday speech. But think of register like a volume knob for formality.
That's a good way to put it.
And using slang is exactly like using hot sauce on a meal. If you add just a few drops of hot sauce, it enhances the flavor perfectly. It makes the dish feel vibrant and authentic. But if you unscrew the cap and dump the entire bottle all over your plate,
You completely ruin the meal.
you ruin it. It's overwhelming, it masks the actual food, and it just feels totally unnatural.
A very apt analogy. One of the primary mistakes language learners make is over-seasoning the dish. They try to cram 5 of these slang phrases into a single 2-minute conversation to prove they know them.
Like, I lowkey went rogue and got your 6. No one talks like that.
No one. Native speakers do not talk entirely in slang. They use standard English, and they sprinkle the slang in as an accent, a subtle seasoning applied to emphasize a specific point.
And you have to know who you're serving the dish to. This is where context comes in. You use these phrases with your friends at a bar. You absolutely do not use them when you're negotiating a salary or talking to a judge in traffic court.
Definitely not.
Telling your boss to abort mission during a serious quarterly financial review is going to land terribly.
Because the context dictates the register. A professional setting requires a formal register, and slang inherently violates that expectation. It signals a casual intimacy that either hasn't been earned or simply isn't appropriate for the environment. It shows a lack of social awareness.
And another rule of thumb: never over-explain your own joke. You can't pause a conversation to announce, I am now going to use an informal phrase. You just have to drop it in and keep moving. If you draw attention to the slang, it loses all of its casual power. It stops being cool the second you explain it.
The effortlessness is the point, which is why delivery matters so much. We talked about the deadpan tone required for "I'm dead." If you misjudge the tone, if you sound too earnest when you should sound sarcastic or too theatrical when you should be flat, the phrase immediately sounds foreign to the listener's ear, even if the grammar is perfect.
This raises an important question, though. How on earth does someone practice this safely? You can't just memorize sarcasm or deadpan delivery from a vocabulary list.
You really can't. You have to listen first. Before attempting to deploy these idioms in your own speech, you must immerse yourself in the natural rhythm of American content. Watch the movies, listen to conversations, observe how the actors interact.
Like, really study it.
Pay close attention to who is speaking to whom, the power dynamics between them, and how their vocal pitch and facial expressions change when they use these phrases.
So you have to tune your ear to the frequency before you try to broadcast on it.
Precisely. Mastering the register of a language relies entirely on understanding context and mastering delivery. It is an exercise in observation before it ever becomes an exercise in expression.
You really have to absorb the culture before you can speak it. And that's the core takeaway here for you listening. By understanding these phrases, by knowing the subtle psychological difference between accepting blame and enforcing a boundary, by understanding why we use life or death military commands to talk about ordering pizza, you aren't just memorizing a list of idioms.
No, you're doing much more than that.
You are unlocking the ability to genuinely participate in the culture. You get the underlying humor, the social dynamics, the unspoken subtext. And hopefully, you can finally watch your favorite thriller without needing to pause every 5 minutes to Google the dialogue.
It transforms you from a passive decoder of literal words into an active participant in the actual conversation. It represents a massive leap toward true fluency.
It really does. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a slightly maddening thought to chew on.
Oh,
We've just spent all this time perfectly decoding these phrases. But slang, by its very nature, is constantly mutating. It's born in text threads, on social media, in high school hallways. By the time a cool new phrase gets noticed, written into a script, filmed, edited, and finally makes it onto the big screen in a Hollywood movie, is it already considered uncool and outdated by the teenagers who originally invented it?
That is a very real phenomenon.
Right. How do we hit a linguistic target that is constantly moving? Are we just perpetually chasing an echo?
That is the eternal paradox of studying a living language. The moment you pin it down to examine it, the culture has already evolved into something else entirely.
So the work is never really done. Keep your ears open, keep watching, and most importantly, pay attention to the unspoken subtext of how people actually speak. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you're on the couch and the movie hero looks over her shoulder, you won't need to reach for your phone. You can just smile, sit back, and know that you've absolutely got her six.